On today's Hiwatt soundbite, we're applying some heat. Well, am I ever excited about today's session? Part 2 of our discussion into distortion and how to effectively introduce distortion into your own productions. Last week was all about why I like to put so much distortion into my mixes. This week is a bit more hands-on and some of the processes that I like to get up to in creating that distortion. You know, one of the things I love about being a recording engineer is just the sheer unlimited number of experiments that we can get up to in the studio. And the fact that the studio never came with a rule book. This is so important. I'm not sure how long I would have lasted at this had it come with a rule book. In fact, in my own experience, the more rules that I break, the better results that I get. So in preparation for today's session, I came down to the studio last night and I opened up the AltMix of our Collaborating Under Lockdown project. And I proceeded to add some heat. Check this out.
Transmission is coming to you approximately halfway between the moon and the Earth.
Absolute filthiness going on there and I love it. So let's break this thing down a little bit. You know, the main driving drum beat and bass line provided to us by Johnny W and TL3SS. What killer contributions those are and such a good groove. Let's have a listen to the raw unprocessed files. Check it. And with the heat applied. I love how grotty those drums are. That's my Lexicon PCM42 with the input just redlined, full blast, and zero delay time, no feedback. So I'm not really using it as a delay. I'm just using the internal electronics of that device to just apply some serious distortion. The Lexicon PCM42 has always been a go-to distortion generator for me. There's something very unique about the soft limiter and the circuit that they have on the front end of that device. And when you send really serious level to that delay, the results can just be spectacular. There's a characteristic in the distortion of that sound that I've always found very difficult to try and create with plugins. There's something magical that happens when you hit a real electronic piece of equipment too hard. There's just certain interactions within that piece of electronics and all of those components that make a really amazing distortion. Now, I use a lot of plugins, and I am today, to generate distortion, but hardware is still my go-to when it comes to creating unique distortion sounds. Just this morning, I was inspired to come into the studio and create a brand new distorted vocal sound. Well, the two pieces of gear that I pulled out, I've used for decades, each one of these pieces of gear, but never have I used them in exactly the combination I did today. And this is just one of those things that I love about being an engineer is the fact that I've probably created hundreds of different distorted vocal sounds over my career. But when I came in this morning, I felt inspired to try something new. And this is what I strongly encourage everybody to do is always be pushing your envelope and always be trying new experiments, right? When it comes to creating a really crunchy, gnarly sounding drum distortion, I'm often reaching for hardware, and many times I'm reaching for that PCM42 because it's just so killer sounding. This driving bass line and drum combo from TL3SS is so effective in this track, and does it ever feed into distortion well? So I'm using the Moog filter to just drive the front end of that. And then I'm driving that into a Universal Audio ATR 102 plugin. I use this often when I'm trying to add a bit of saturated kind of color to that sound. I'm not really trying to crush anything, I'm just trying to add some saturation and some warmth to it. I find one of the most effective controls on the ATR 102 is that bias control, and setting different adjustments for that, adding warmth and character to a sound. Very, very cool. Now, I think I should point something out here, that because I use that Lexicon PCM42 for the main drum and bass line crush factor, that's a mono delay. So the beautiful stereo bass and drum line and everything just collapsed down to mono. And when it comes to distortion, mono is your friend. This has just been something in my own experience that really cuts through. I remember last week I was playing that Rodent remix. One of the reasons that thing cuts so well on a big PA and club system is because there's a lot of mono content in that mix. And this is just something that I wouldn't shy away from. This is just absolutely one of my own beliefs, is that, you know, a large content of mono distorted material in your mix will translate really well to the outside world. Definitely.
Isolation! Control! Lock it down! Shut them down!
Nice little crunchy vocal sound going on there. Let's break this thing down a little bit. First, we're going to listen to Terry's original vocal performance without this distortion I've added. Check it.
Isolation! Control! Lock it down! Shut them down! Isolation! Control! Lock it down! Shut them down!
I'm using Saturn to create that, and this is a plugin that I use often, particularly for mild distortion and saturation. I love this plugin and I use it a lot. Even within mastering sessions, I've been known to use Saturn to kind of provide a little bit of heat. In this particular case, I'm using it far more as a crunch factor, right?
Isolation! Control! Lock it down! Shut them down! Isolation!
A very common issue that I experience when adding distortion of vocals, just about on any plugin, you're gonna lose all of the air on that vocal. You're gonna lose all that beautiful top end that was recorded in that vocal track. More often than not, when I experience this today, I just get my microphone out and I use my own voice to provide air. I did it in this track and it worked really, really well.
Isolation! Control! Lock it down! Shut them down! Isolation!
Yeah, I've tried so many different methods to try and recover that air from that vocal track. Multiple parallels and all kinds of stuff. In my own experience, the most effective means of bringing that air back to the mix is getting your vocal mic out and recording it. Yeah, it makes for a nice aggressive vocal sound that I can still hear clearly. It's awesome. That is the result of a ton of processing on Michael's arpeggiated sequence that he sent us. Let me just take all of those plugins off. There's 6 of them that are creating that effect. I'll go ahead and play this thing dry, and then I'll just introduce each one of these plugins one after another. Yeah, pretty extreme amount of processing going on there. And this is something I get up to often where I've got a nice clean sound feeding into a distorted effect or delay in this case. Yeah, very effective. And the process I go about pulling that off, I've talked about in past sessions where when I'm setting up that auxiliary to put the delay on, I just create an additional auxiliary so that I have an opportunity to insert some kind of distortion plugin or whatever kind of plugin before that effect. So when I'm mixing away and I'm adding auxiliaries to my track so I can bring in more effects, almost always I'm adding 2 auxiliaries for each one of those sends so that I give myself an opportunity to put a plugin in between the send and the input to that effect. It can be so effective, particularly when it comes to modulating stuff. Really, really effective. What an awesome sound, and very typical when you insert 6 distortion plugins in a row. Everything just sort of goes into self-oscillation. There's no signal running through anything, but you've got so much crazy distortion and modulation going on that literally a thing just sits there and self-oscillates and creates its own distortion, right? So I have to go into the track and program mutes to make sure we don't hear that. Granted, it's kind of cool. Let's check this out. When a piece of gear or a plugin goes into self-oscillation, the results can be really spectacular sometimes. So just something to keep in mind, you know, those happy accidents. Okay, so let's check out this vocal mic. I'll put headphones on so I don't blast feedback everywhere. Mute those babies, turn that on. Okay, I've got a basic vocal sound up here, lots of harmonizer on there. This Focusrite Voice Master, this is the little unit that I've taken on the road with Skinny Puppy, and I've used this thing for Ogre's Vocal Live. I love this device because we're hearing it nice and dry and flat right now, but it's got this awesome heater in it. Check that out. You just press a button and it has a couple of knobs on it. They call it vocal saturation. Sounds cool. So typically I'll throw a gate on something like this, nice mild gate. Boom. Yeah, makes it a little quieter. And to step this sound up even another notch, I blew the dust off my Korg SDD 1000 and I created an insert. Check out what it sounds like when I put this Korg delay inserted on this mic pre. Unreal. Boom. Inserted. Check it. Yes. Check it. Check. This is just a great example of a couple of pieces of gear that I've used for decades, but never have I put the Korg SDD 1000 as an insert on that mic channel. And it absolutely kills. The thing just sounds awesome. Just another killer gain stage that I get to mess with. It's unreal. Okay, I'm being a little bit ridiculous, okay, but there's a point to this. I'm gonna share something that I think is absolutely critical in your productions. Most of what I do today is post-processing, okay? I'm often brought in towards the end of a project to help mix and bring that thing together for the final mix. When I'm doing that, I'm doing a lot of post-production. I'm adding distortion effects to tracks that have already been recorded. One of the single greatest things that you can do for your productions is to have your vocalist singing through these effects. It is so important. When we talk about Skinny Puppy songs and we've referenced tracks going all the way back, when Ogre would come in and sing on those songs, 9 times out of 10, the vocal sound that you hear on the album, the actual final kind of killer vocal sound, is the sound that Ogre was singing through when he was recording those vocals. If any of you have experienced this, when you have a producer or an engineer really dial you in a killer vocal sound that has all kinds of effects in the headphones and delays and harmonizers and all kinds of cool stuff, you step up to the mic and you put the headphones on and you're inspired as a singer. It's because of that vocal being so over the top and affected that it inspires me to sing into that effect. On just about every Skinny Puppy session, Dave Ogilvy and I would go into that studio at least 2 or 3 hours early, and Rave would let me spend like 2 hours in the control room with headphones on. I'd pull the mic in well before Ogre would show up. I would spend 2 or 3 hours dialing up a really killer vocal sound. And this is just something that I used to love doing that. And it was a bit of a challenge, right? And always exciting to have Ogre come in and put those headphones on and just be like, wow, when he steps up to the vocal mic, right? Just be like blown away. And of course, the result, it absolutely shows because Ogre would then sing into that effect. I feel like I could talk about this subject for like a week and still not cover everything that I've learned about distortion. But I hope this inspires you to start experimenting. Time to blow the dust off all those old pieces of gear, start patching them together, and see what kind of awesome combination you can come up with. Distortion is your friend.